Another one of my favorite chords, E minor, but with that sixth again. Or the add 9, this is the add 9. This is the sixth. So this is like... There's a Kiss song called I Still Love You off Creatures of the Night that uses all those chords.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, pretty cool.
I love that. How are you, Steve Stein?
I'm good. How are you, Dan?
I'm good, man. I'm glad to be here with you.
Well, I'm glad to be here with you, too.
There we go. Hey, guys, thanks for joining us today on the acoustic guitar workshop session for today. My name is Dan Denley, founder of GuitarZoom.com, and this is my friend, Steve Stein.
Hello.
Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. Thanks for being here. Please tell us where you're from. Steve and I like to watch, or we like to know where everybody's from. There's lots of folks from all over the planet who check out our videos, and we do appreciate every single one of you, wherever you are. If you have questions, comments, put them in the chat box, put them in the comment box. If you'd like to be notified of when we're doing another one of these sessions, please subscribe and hit the notify button so that you can get a notification of when we're going to be going live again. If you join this late, well, I guess you wouldn't be hearing this, but anyway, we're going to be, if you're joining late, you're not going to be hearing me say this. If you would like to check out all the workshop videos we've done, we'll post them for you right there on YouTube. You can watch them in a nice little neat, tidy playlist called Acoustic Workshop, Acoustic Guitar Workshop. You can check that out on the GuitarZoom YouTube channel, or you can check it out on Steve's channel. That's the Steve Stein YouTube channel. And thank you for being here. We do appreciate your time. It means the world to Steve and I. And today we're going to be talking about pivot points, which is a fast and easy way to change chords. If you want to learn how to do that, keep watching. If you want to learn how to do it even faster, you can check out Steve's new guitar course. It's called Acoustic Guitar, and it's by a guy named Steve Stein, who's pretty good at teaching, I hear. And it's available. I'm getting punchy, man. It's available at GuitarZoom.com. All righty, sir. Pivot points, how to change chords fast and easy. I'm excited for this.
Yeah, so basically, if you think about it, when I was first learning how to play chords, you know, I would learn G and C like everybody else, and D. And not that we don't use all of that, because of course we do, but there's something that you can learn and think about, especially if you see it in songs that you learn, where you leave fingers down, you leave fingers on the guitar, and you simply move around those fingers. So I've always called that a pivot point, because the finger isn't leaving the fretboard. So for instance, on a G chord, if I was to make a G chord, and I wanted to do G, C, and D, which is a really, really common chord progression, instead of doing the traditional G and C like this, and D, and again, in my showing you this, that doesn't mean that G, C, and D like this is bad or wrong or we won't use it. Of course we will. This is just a different idea, okay? So we could take the G chord here, and we could play what's called a C add 9 simply by taking these two fingers and moving down one string. And what happened was I left these two fingers intact. So they stayed there for the G, and now they're going to stay there for the C chord. Now, the first question I always get when I show people this is, well, isn't that a different chord than the regular C? And the answer is yes and no. It is a different chord than the regular C. You can hear that it sounds a little different. The thing about it, though, is that it's a chord, this voicing of C, this C add 9, if you will, sounds really good over virtually any other situation where the song would be asking for a regular C. That doesn't mean that it's always going to be perfect, but if you're just kind of learning how this stuff works, this is a great way of learning how to play these chords, because it's a little bit easier to move. And I'm going to show you in just a minute. It's a very common way of playing these chord changes as well. I'm going to play you some songs I'm sure you've heard of using this. So I'm taking G, and I'm just moving these two fingers down one string, which is becoming this new C. And then if I wanted to go to D, I could leave my third finger on the guitar on the second string there and make the D chord. So I'm pivoting again with that third finger on that second string, and I leave it down. And that's really serving two purposes. Number one is it makes it a little more comfortable for me, and it doesn't mean it's going to make it comfortable for everybody. Some people try it and go, that feels really weird. It's very comfortable for me to move leaving a finger down like that. Okay? The second thing is that there's an element of continuity in the sound of each chord voicing. And the last thing really, if there was a third one, it's that that note gets to ring out over everybody. It doesn't, you don't get this blocked stop, stop sound when you're moving chords. Something can continually vibrate through, and it kind of connects all the chords together, which is a really nice kind of bonus to that as well, which I've always really liked. So showing that in action, if I played, going back to, if I can remember how to play these songs. Like I Remember You by Skid Row, or you know, Sweet Home Alabama, right? Those, they use these chords. This is a very common way of playing G, C, and D. So, you know, if you were learning how to play She'll Be Coming Around the Mountain, that sort of thing, when you first start learning how to play, you might play the traditional G, C, and D quite often. But in learning how to play popular music, you're going to see that many artists out there play their G and C and D in the way that I'm showing you right now. So,
So I'm curious, Steve, could you substitute, like, let's see somebody sitting there with, and they're thinking, well, I'm looking at a chord chart or a lead sheet or something that has C on it. Does that mean that I can just take that C that you're playing now and substitute it?
right.
Will it
And as
sound
I,
okay?
yep, and I said that a little earlier, you can do that in most every situation. The only time that I find that it really doesn't work is if you have a song where it's relying on this C voicing, you know, for some sort of melody or something, where you need something like that in there. When you go here, that melody doesn't exist anymore. As a chord to strum, most times it's going to work just fine. I can't say every single time because I don't live in a world of absolutes. So, you know, can you play it every single time? I can't say yes to that. But certainly 90% of your time playing this C instead of this C would work just fine. And again, if you start exploring some of the songs you're learning how to play, you might even realize that many of the songs that you're learning how to play would play G and C and D in this fashion. Now, again, that doesn't mean this is the only way. Like I've had students that they learn how to play G the three-finger way. So they're using three fingers. They're using pinky, third, and middle finger. And they play their G that way. And then when they want to go to C, they drop it down that way. And they might leave their pinky here for that. Or they might take it off, right? Okay? But the point is we all learn differently. And when I learned how to play, I didn't learn G, C, and D this way. I learned how to play the traditional cowboy G, cowboy C, cowboy D. That's how I learned how to play it. It's just as I started learning more and more songs of artists that I liked, this C kept popping up. And that's when I started becoming aware, oh, I could use a pivot point. I'll show you another pivot point in a second here too. Let's say I was doing D. Now this is going to be a little bit more creative. We did a section on creative chords a while back, but and let's say I wanted to go to C. I could leave this third finger on that second string and then head over here to C and then maybe go to B and then to B flat. And I can get lots of unique sounds by doing stuff like that too. And what I'm doing is, again, finding a pivot point. And what that's doing is, again, it's giving me the availability of being able to keep that finger down to pivot on physically, but it's also kind of bringing a cohesion to all of my changes. And you'll also notice that I'm leaving that first string open, which is another element of a melody that you keep hearing. Which kind of reminds me of like Needle in the Damage Done. That song always pops in my head when I play that, but it's I love that chord progression, that sound. So it's just something really to get used to, is because the problem I always used to have is I was frustrated with, and for lack of a better term, the blockiness of changing chords, where I always had to lift everything up. And again, don't get me wrong, it's not that I don't ever do that. Of course I do. I play through them now, where I'll keep strumming and move my chords and that sort of thing to keep that element of cohesion. But I've always loved the sound of being able to keep something pivoting through my chord changes like that.
Very cool. We're calling these pivot points, guys. You can call them pivot notes. It's a common note that is going to be in the same chord. It's going to be the same note's going to be in multiple chords.
Yeah, so same note or notes. It might be more than one.
Yeah, that's a great point. So I think it's important, especially with learning guitar players, and of course we're all learning, but to just keep an open mind that there are really no, unless you're a classical musician and, there's just very little flexibility. When you're talking about the stuff that we're talking about, part of it is finding out what sound you want, what sound you're going for. There's some structure here, which it's a G chord structure. It has the note G in it. It's a C chord, but in this case, it also has the D note, which is not usually in a C chord. That's why it's called a C add 9, because you're adding that ninth, you're adding the D. There's these elements that I think you need to be aware of, that they are in the, you're sharing this one note across these different chords, and you're just keeping that common note. And don't get hung up on, well, D really isn't in a C chord. It's just a pivot note that you can use.
Right. And again, this is coming from the school of visualization and oral training, listening, right? I didn't grow up with a theory background. And so theory wasn't something that I felt like at all. And even today, when people ask me, when I write songs, how do I write a song in whatever particular mode or something? And I'm like, I don't even think, I just write based on how it sounds and how it feels. You can, needless to say, with this sort of GCD thing, it comes from a finger concept of being able to keep your fingers in a particular shape that makes it easier to switch back and forth. Far more than somebody went, well, let's figure out the theory and blah, blah, blah. So, Dan's absolutely right. What's weird about guitar, and when I teach like classes and things, I always try and remind people that the guitar is a vast gray area. Like if you buy a book and you start learning how to learn from a book, all you see is what's on page 3 or page 4. That's all you know about guitar. So it seems like that's the answer. Like if it shows a C chord, that's it. Like there's a C chord on the guitar. That's it, the one. But in reality, there are 50 different ways of playing that guitar, 100 different ways of playing that on the guitar, and then there's permutations of that. And again, permutations that are done because of the way the guitar sounds, the way the guitar looks, the way we approach it with 4 fingers and 6 strings. And so I don't want to get all weird on you, but you just have to understand, the longer you play, it's not like all your questions are always going to get answered. Sometimes your questions are going to open up more questions. But what you have to remember is, how do things sound? Like if I show you a couple more examples, I'm going to incorporate E minor into this now. So I've got G, I've got C, I've got D. G and C shared 2 common notes, really 3, those 3 strings. And then D shared that one string right there. But again, it's really just the ability of being able to keep something constant between them. Now, if I move to E minor, I'm going to leave these two fingers here again, and I'm going to move to E minor. And when I do that, I get what we would technically call an E minor 7. Because I'm adding in the note D down here. Okay, but when I do that, for instance, you would hear this in a song by Smashing Pumpkins called Disarm. Yeah. Now, that doesn't mean that the guitar player is always playing all 6 strings at all times. Again, we talked in a prior video, we talked about dynamic strumming and ocean strumming and that sort of thing. And that still applies even with something like this. But that's how you can see that that's a very common thing. There's another one of my favorite songs by Alice in Chains called Nutshell that goes like this. And you can see I'm moving from E minor to G, D, C. And because it's kind of slow, but because of that cohesion, it doesn't sound blocky when I play. I can keep that down. And then later, he does this, which sounds really cool. Then he takes this off, and all of a sudden it's this dramatic difference in sound, in pitch. You see? Which I just think is cool. And again, that's the kind of music that I grew up with was, you know, all of these guitar players exploring what something felt like on the guitar and then what it sounded like. More so than, you know, these are your 4 chords, and there you are. You know, there's just a million different ways of approaching these. Like at the very beginning, when I was playing that E minor I was telling you like so much. I guarantee you Kiss is not sitting there thinking about music theory, right? Mm. It's how it sounds. You know? How did that go again?
Sanitarium.
Yeah, there's a Metallica song in there somewhere, but yeah. Same idea, same principle. It's done by exploring, you see? But even there, we've got this consistency, you see? Which is the same idea as the Kiss tune, and there's a lot of songs out there that do that kind of thing. But anyway.
So cool, man. I think it's really important for people to remember that music is about having fun.
Yeah.
It's really about an emotion. It's about...
That's right. And to be creative, you've got to break out of the normalcy of everything else, because if you just did exactly the same thing the same way every single time, everything would sound the same. Sometimes you break out in a way you approach a chord. Sometimes you break out in the way that you sing. Sometimes you break out in the way that you play the bass or the drums or a saxophone. Or I mean, there's a million different things that go into it, but somebody's got to step outside the parameters a little bit to give it something that's a little different than everything else.
That's right. This is a super cool idea, these pivot points, changing chords, keeping that common note between the different elements. Guys, if you're enjoying this, keep watching. If you want to learn it even faster, you can check out Steve's new course. It's called Acoustic Guitar by Steve Stein, and it's available at GuitarZoom.com. Where to go from here, my friend?
I think that's enough. I think that's enough to give them some good stuff to try and work with a little bit. Think about the way that they're playing chords. Again, I revert back to me not knowing anything. And and how it was just so enlightening when I would learn something new because I hadn't thought, obviously, I hadn't thought of it before. I'm not the one that invented how to play guitar. So anytime I could get my hands on something that was outside the normal box, it was very exciting for me because then I would practice and practice and practice. And even in my learning was so non-traditional, not really having lessons and things. So anytime I could get a new idea, I would sit and just kind of, just regurgitate it over and over and over until it became something that I could use, and or I would hear it in other songs. That was the other thing I had, was because of the way I learned how to play, I could hear things. So when I would listen to a song, I'd go, "Oh, that's that." And then it made learning other songs easier because I already knew that idea was coming. So again, I don't want to get too far out there, but just think about that a little bit and be okay with the fact that every once in a while, you're going to be introduced to something that makes you go, "Oh, I didn't realize that existed," or "I didn't realize I could do that." There's parameters, as Dan said. I don't call them rules. There's no rules. There's parameters of understanding that if the song asked for a G chord, you're not going to play a flat chord. It's not going to work, right? But if the song asks for a G chord, there may be some gray area in how you approach playing that, whether you play it as a 3-finger G or a 4-finger G or a bar chord G or a higher bar chord G, or I mean there's a lot of different options of things that you could do. You might say, "Well, I want to play it the way that the original guitar player played it." That's okay. In my world, there's nothing wrong with learning how to do that. But when you get into a band and you actually are going to perform that song, you might have to rethink that, because you don't need two guitar players playing everything exactly the same way. Otherwise, why do you have two guitar players, right?
That's
So
a
then
great
all of a
point.
sudden you're going, "Well, I should try and play it a different way to complement the band, to complement the song, to entertain the audience, that sort of thing." So,
It's endlessly fascinating what
mhm.
you can do. This the guitar, because I didn't come from this world. I came from a classical background, and so for me, when I discovered guitar at 13, it was just like, wow, these guys are total rule breakers, man. There is no, this guy isn't thinking like
Yeah.
I'm using the Phrygian, E Phrygian mode, Spanish Phrygian mode. I'm like, no, it's Marty Friedman, man. He's playing like, I don't know. Actually, Marty probably is thinking
Well,
that,
I was
but
going to say and let's not go that direction either, that guitar players don't understand anything. Guitar
no,
players understand a ton of things. It's
right,
just, to what level do you use your information?
yeah,
You're not basing your information saying, "I cannot do this."
right,
You're building from a creative place, and then oftentimes the theory will come in and go, "So how do I approach the next step?" Like, I need something here, or I need a layer of a melody or a harmony or something. Well, that's when your theory can kick in.
that's
So
right,
so again, it's, I always tell people I don't live in a world of all or nothing. At least I try not to. There's got to be room for everything. It's just that for me, rock and roll wouldn't exist if we were basing everything on a right and a wrong,
right,
because the basis, fundamental, the foundation of it is wrong, if you're going to say it that way.
yeah,
But is it wrong? You're just reinventing the rules.
that's right,
You're just creating a new set of rules. So, and again, what it comes down to is, for me, isn't fitting into any of these categories. It's just creating something or playing something that pleases you as a guitar player, as a human, and it hopefully pleases somebody else as well. So,
yeah. You remind me of something. There's when you said it's not right or wrong, don't think the guitar players don't know anything, because they know a lot of things. It's kind of like, once you have this structure, then you can improvise on the structure. You can alter the structure. You can be inventive, be creative. It's not either or. It's either I'm going to do it the right way, or it's the wrong way. Either I'm going to be a music theory, nerd, or I'm going to be creative. It's not that. It's both. And once you have a structure, then you can do whatever you want to. Then you can throw it out the window, but at least you have some clue of, like you said, if the song calls for a G chord, you can't play an A flat.
yeah, right,
That's outside,
right.
because harmonically it doesn't work. But could you do a G9? Maybe. A G minor seventh? Maybe. Depends on if you're looking for a major, minor chord, regular old G chord, a G, whatever, sus, whatever.
And it's okay if you don't understand what Dan's talking about, because these are all, again, theory terms. And if you're learning how to play G, C, and D, you might not know what those are. But but he's absolutely right. I mean, again, I learned what the things Dan's talking about. Think of it like this: you learn through trial and error. You try it and listen to it and go, "That sounds too far outside." Where
Yeah.
your neighbor might listen to it and go, "That's exactly what I was looking for." Right?
Yeah.
So we're all just kind of looking for something different with the way we play and what we want to hear. So.
Right. And these pivot notes are a great place to start exploring, guys. Just keep that finger down and change the chords and say, yeah, that makes sense, or not. This has been super fascinating, man. It's always a pleasure to be with you guys. Thank you so much for being here with us. Steve and I are just flattered and humbled every time anybody shows up to any of these sessions. So if you enjoyed this, it's like, wow, somebody showed up. Cool. If not, it'll just be me and Steve. We'll just have fun. Thanks for being here, guys. And of course, subscribe and hit the notify button if you want to get notification of the next time we do one of the acoustic guitar workshops. We'll put them all there for you in a nice, tight, easy to access playlist on the YouTube channel, wherever you're subscribed. And if you want to go deep into acoustic guitar, A to Z, the complete guide, it's available for you on GuitarZoom.com. And Steve's newest course is called Acoustic Guitar by Steve Stein. Everything you want to know about acoustic. That's all I got, man.
Cool. It was fun. Thank you, everybody, for being here. And we'll talk to you in the next video.
See you in the next session, guys.
Take care.
Bye.